These are my values. This is what I want to contribute. This is the impact that I want to make. Which organizations have those values and roles that align for me to help me carry out my mission?
Hi, I'm Nils, and you're listening to the B2B Leadership Podcast, a show dedicated to demystifying leadership development one conversation at a time. Each week, I sit down with leaders in the B2B space to discuss their journey and what they've learned along the way. This podcast is brought to you by the B2B Leaders Academy. The cost of not consistently developing your leadership skills is enormous, and the B2B Leaders Academy features monthly leadership training and live coaching. Being a great leader isn't hard. You just need a guide and the right set of tools. So head on over to b2bleadersacademy.com to join and become the leader you have always wanted to be. Hello and welcome to another episode of the B2B Leadership Podcast. My name is Nils, and today my guest is Jewel Edward Love Jr. Jewel, welcome to the show.
Nils, thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Jewel, I'm so glad you're here. Now, you're the founder of Black Executive Med, and would love to start by learning a little bit more about what that is. Please share that with me and our audience.
There's this belief that there aren't that many Black men in senior leadership in corporate America. And it's true. There aren't that many Black men in senior leadership in corporate America. And so the clients that I work with as an executive coach are these guys. So we're talking director, SVP, VP, senior director, and C-suite guys that are many times feeling lonely, feeling isolated, not from a business leadership standpoint, but from a cultural, racial standpoint, not being able to go to their colleagues and talk about the similarities and differences that they're having and how that impacts their performance and their job. So that's really the niche area that I operate in. And these are the clients that I serve. Just to give you a little bit of background. So I'm biracial. I'm mixed with African American. My father, he's African American, born in Missouri, raised in Chicago. Met my mom, who's Scottish Canadian, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then they had me and my twin sister. So I grew up alongside my dad, who's an entrepreneur. And all of his businesses have been in the Black community with a philosophy of community upliftment. While many kids were with their dads at the Oakland A's baseball game, hot dogs, oversized Coca-Cola and popcorn, I was talking business with my dad, or more like hearing different business conversations that my dad was in, alongside these philosophies for improving the Black community in various ways. So I always knew that I was going to be an entrepreneur when I grew up. I just didn't know what my offering was going to be. In my 20s, I studied various spiritual traditions and communities and was really looking for avenues for personal development that could relate back to the Black community that weren't already there. And what I stumbled across was psychotherapy and the field of psychology, which was not a huge conversation in the Black community at the time. I decided to learn more about it, and it changed my life. I mean, just I like to tell people that from a week to week basis, I was feeling better. I was looking better. Like my clothes were even like nicer, to the point where I said, I love this and I want to make it my career. And at that time, believe it or not, I didn't know that was an option, to sit across the room from someone and talk to them for an hour and then they'd cash you out for it. It was just blew my mind. That was a career choice. So I went back to school and I got my master's, and that's when I started Black Executive Men. So we actually started in Oakland, California, small, I mean, hole in the wall, cutting hole. You open the door, you got to squeeze by me to get to your to your chair. Hopefully, I'm not dealing with any clients that were claustrophobic, and providing psychotherapy. And it was phenomenal to have these conversations with Black men in corporate America about their reality. And this is a piece of the Black community which is not highlighted that much, even though these guys are making pretty good paydays and have the family life going many times. Usually in the black community, highlighted are the entertainers. Those are the people who everybody
Yeah.
thinks about, knows, they're promoted the most. And yet, this part of the community, in a very real way, and I know it's a controversial statement, on many ways are a huge part of the backbone of the black community. And they're just this kind of unsung hero types, and they're doing amazing work. And these are the guys from the Harvards and the Yales, the Morehouse and the Berkeley. So I was just inspired by doing that work and discovered that one of the elements contributing to their mental health concerns was a lack of career advancement and then being so frustrated by it. So that's how I then pivoted into coaching to help them unlock their careers. We call it the three S's: salary, seniority, satisfaction. And I see their mental health improve as well. Long story short, full kind of circle back to who we are and what we do and things of that nature. I just wanted to give you more story to answer the question.
No, that's a wonderful story. Incredible background. And I just love the fact that you followed your passion, right? You discovered this, had no clue it was there before, experienced the goodness for yourself first, and then found a way to help other people. And I think that's the hallmark of a coach, period, in whatever discipline we're talking about. But you have to go through the process of coaching and the transformation yourself in order to, one, know that it's real, and two, be able to perhaps form a business just like you did around sharing that same passion and that same transformation with other people. I think that's just absolutely wonderful.
You know, where you're having a real conversation, have you experienced therapy or being a coaching client yourself? And if you have, what would you say are the benefits of those experiences for your business, for your professional life?
Utmost respect for the world of therapy. There is a time and a place where that is most appropriate. I have engaged with that at one particular time in my life that was more extreme than any other. And I went through a job, and I was at this job for only a matter of 5 or 6 months, but it was so opposite who I was
Right.
as a person that I literally tore myself apart trying to show up, convincing myself that I was supposed to be there. And I left and I quit that job. And I remember just bawling my eyes out because I had no idea what I was going to do at this point. I mean, I was married. I told my wife, I was like, I have no clue where to go. And I was lost. Thankfully, my parents helped me out and set me up and said, you need to talk with a therapist. And I was like, okay, I hadn't done that since I was a really little kid. And I was like, okay, well, I got nothing. Sure. And I went, and over the course of, I mean, it was a relatively short period of time, 3, 6 months, but it was impactful, incredibly impactful. And what I noticed was that we focused on
Mm,
unraveling the past. And I went back to some things and where this misalignment with this work came from and what it was really a
yep.
symptom of. Because that was the more important thing, not my misalignment. It was where did this come from? And I had to address some stuff from my past. Now, the other side was when I became a leadership coach in 2012, so over a little over 10 years ago. And I went through a leadership coaching program and I experienced the coaching process through becoming a coach. I thought it was fascinating because we would learn techniques and strategies from our instructor, and then we had to practice the techniques with each other. So, our peer coaches that we were in the program with, we became each other's coach, and then we'd switch and we'd go through it. So, you could not experience the being the coach side without being the coachee as well. And from the first weekend that I was in that program, I mean, there was one very powerful question that my counter coach asked me, and it unlocked everything. It changed the game. Like it was so quick. And that was my point, just like you described. That was my point where I said, oh my goodness, there is something here. And it aligns with me so well that I have to pursue and keep pursuing this. And this is why I'm still ultimately a coach today.
Thank you.
So we got two coaches who've been through the power of coaching, having some fun.
Absolutely.
Both trying to help leaders
Yeah.
inside of organizations become more efficient, become better people, have better networks, have greater reputation within their organization. Now, you mentioned the 3 S's in salary, seniority, satisfaction. Tell me a little bit more about those.
Yes. Folks tend to lean on the first two. They're the most obvious, especially in corporate America. Salary, seniority. Salary affords you the lifestyle that you're going to want to lead. So we're talking about global travel with your family or local as well, being able to invest into your retirement and save for retirement. The second home, paying off the mortgage. If your kids are going to private schools or just school in general, think, backpacks, pens, pencils, crayons, whatever, protractors, making sure their iPhone is up to date. All that's it just costs money. The salary piece, it's what enables us to be able to afford all this. And then ideally a little bit more for the saving and for the investing and supporting different hobbies, things of that nature pretty much speaks for itself. And yet, it's important to be able to grow that over time, to go from 180 to 200, to go from 250 to total comp, let's say up to 350,
Yeah.
to go from 80 to 120, just to keep growing that over your career. It's a huge piece of the puzzle. And when that's not happening, people can become upset, less productive, want to change their job. So that's a P for you business owners out there who have employees on payroll. But that's pretty obvious. Then the second thing, a little less obvious, but really important, is the seniority. Now, the seniority is often linked to the promotion, total comp package. However, there's something psychological that comes with the seniority element, and it's the influence. We're human beings, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we got our more basic food and shelter, and then there's importance. And this comes up higher, but it's a real driver for productivity, motivation, and for employees staying at one's organization is having that higher level of seniority and the respect, the prestige, the influence, increased responsibility as well that comes with that. So that's another piece of the puzzle. But most folks in corporate pretty well aware of those things and the value of them. And then you have the third S, and many times people will sacrifice the first two for the third, and that's job satisfaction. Now we can get into it because we're coaches, and this is a thing that we go deep on, a level of purpose, a level of alignment. I mean, for my spiritual folks out there, soul alignment with your mission in life and your professional endeavors, and having those sync up can actually be a sense of great fulfillment. This is what we call the feel good currency. And fewer folks are identifying exactly what that would look like for them and focused on the first two. But here at Black Executive Men, and likely most coaches in general, are going to be tracking this piece of the puzzle as well. So salary, seniority, and satisfaction, job satisfaction. That really is the trinity we're really focused on helping our clients to achieve.
That's awesome. You break it down simply, we can clearly see where we are in each of those areas. All right, let's do a little story time here. On the salary side, you've seen what's possible with your clients, me as well. Seniority same and satisfaction same. So, where is the hidden thing that we're all overlooking, or the vast majority of people in corporate America ranks or the startup ranks or the things? What's the oversight that you see? And then I'll share what the oversight is that I see in these three.
It's connected to all three, but it's actually something beneath the surface. Even how we're talking about therapy, and that's kind of how therapy is. It's you hear what the client says and you peel the layers that are impacting what's going on the surface layer. So the three things I named were more on the surface layer. It's usually about helping the client to identify how they're the best in the world at what they do and the impact that they want to make on real people, animals, or the planet. The impact, we call it your impact statement, and having those things aligned. So, this is talent, skill set, even education wise, and natural gifts and abilities. What are you the best in the world at doing? And then with that, what is the impact that you want to make in the world? And then from that place, clients can vet companies. So that's kind of a reversal from how many people go about looking for work or a job. Shotgun approach, send resume everywhere, see what sticks, versus a very specialist or pinpointed approach, which is these are my values. This is what I want to contribute. This is the impact that I want to make. Which organizations have those values and roles that align for me to help me carry out my mission? And hiring
Yeah.
managers oftentimes Love meeting people like that. We call them specialists as opposed to a commodity hire or a corporate beggar. I know that phrase rubs people the wrong way or makes them laugh. And it's partly an ouch factor of, is that me? And I've been all three, so I can speak from experience. But right now, we're talking about identifying how one is a specialist in what they do in the marketplace, and that being able to unlock salary, unlock seniority,
Uh-huh.
unlock job satisfaction.
Wonderful. And that is the whole next level and levels beneath the three S's that ultimately it's like unlocking the keys to the kingdom. If those things are lined up and detailed and nailed down, everything else becomes infinitely easier. But when they're not, you just get this bunch of symptoms at the top.
Pushing that boulder uphill. Yeah.
That's right. Let me ask you, in terms of helping your clients identify how they're absolute best at whatever it is that they are in the world, how do you go about doing that? Just high level overview. Someone says, I like to do XYZ. Like it's usually fairly general, but how do you get them to the specific where they understand and can claim this is what I am better at in the world than everybody else, and this is what makes me unique?
Much of it is going to be based on what you've already done. So this isn't necessarily about creating something new. The famous European sculptors, and they got the big block. And then after a while, they're chiseling out this amazing figure. And it's like smooth as well. But it was in
Yeah.
there the whole time. They just chiseled it away. They didn't have to create new stone in order to do it. So I'll give you an example. There was a brother I was working with in the hospitality industry, and he's a VP, and we're trying to get him to the SVP and actually the C-suite level. And so the first thing we did is we whittled it down to the industry. When we're talking about a specialist, there's all these different industries, and he can whittle it down to the hospitality. So now he's not just a senior leader across the board, he's whittled it down. So he's specified. That already adds value to put him in a room with 100 other people, and you have somebody from the hospitality industry, you come up and he's a specialist in that. But we got to make it even more specific. The next piece is, what are the sizes of organizations that he works with? And his were large. So we're talking about Fortune 1000 organizations. It was something like over $100 million annually. These are the types of organizations that he specializes in working with. And then he whittled it down to the elements of customer service. So he whittles it down to that. And then he whittles it down to his experience of helping to save the company money a certain amount every year. So let's say it's $20 million in operations. He can do that year after year. That already whittles it down to this very pointed, clarified value add that he can bring to an organization compared to somebody else who's just good at what they do. So they've clarified and specified what they do. The next piece is their proven system. This is something that I pulled from the entrepreneurial world, which is 3, 4, or 5 steps on how you achieve what you do. Now, it may sound gimmicky, so to take that off, you don't want to pitch this very directly. You want this to be a little more casually in the W-2 world. For him, it had something to do with starting off with assessment and then approval, execution, refinement, and then flexion, something like that. And he gave it a name to it as well. The reason why having a proven system is so important is because when you're hiring or even looking for that promotion, they can see that you're not just freestyling it out there. Just, I'm great at what I
Yeah.
do. Just put me in, coach. It's like, well, what's the plan? What is the play? Who's involved with it? Can you detail this stuff out so I can
Yeah.
give you the approval? So having that proven plan, it provides management some more accountability for that individual and just more clarity that they know what they're buying. We're all widgets in the corporate world. They're trying to put us into the system to get a certain outcome. That's another piece as well. It's knowing your proven system. The other piece we already talked about earlier is going to be your impact statement. Now, this is what differentiates. This one right here is something that you see corporations spending millions of dollars and bringing consultants. They say, everybody on senior leadership, what are our values? And it's important. They need these. It matters. This is similar for an individual that's looking to become best in the world. It's, yeah, you're a specialist in industry and company size and revenue size and proven system. But how do you want to impact the, be it lives, people, animals, or the planet? And for this particular gentleman, he wanted to improve the lives of other staff to unlock their potential. Now, we can get very specific in this to help them move up to the C suite, to improve their earning potential, their confidence and self esteem, their mental health. So, even if we just took it on that level, because we've been talking about mental health and it's a hot topic these days, is to improve the mental health for everyone at the organization. That's an impact statement, an impact goal. And so that lets the company know that you're there not just for the money, you have something deeper driving you. This is what Simon Sinek calls your why. So this is a really valuable, important piece to have, which can increase your value when you're going in for an interview. And then the last piece of the puzzle is simply knowing your professional mission. So this is different from your impact statement. This is knowing the impact that you want to have on the world of business or your industry. Let's say you're in biopharma industry and you want to put forth 5 cancer drugs within the next 15 years and get them FDA approved. That could be an impact that you have on your industry, and that's your mission. So then you're going to look for roles that align with your goal. And when you're interviewing, asking them, are we in alignment with that? Because that's what I'm here to do. And if that's not what's happening here, then this is not for me. Thank you. Have a nice day. These are all of these pieces put together help to position you in the mind of other people as an industry leader, best in class, an expert, or what we call a specialist at what you do. And that, going back to the 3 S's, helps to unlock opportunities.
We'll get back to the interview in just a minute. This episode is brought to you by the B2B Leaders Academy. The cost of not consistently developing your leadership skills is enormous. The B2B Leaders Academy features monthly leadership training and live coaching. Being a great leader isn't hard. You just need a guide and the right set of tools. Head on over to b2bleadersacademy.com to join and become the leader you have always wanted to be. Now let's get back to the interview. It's so good to hear how you lay it out. We have very similar end goals and some of the work that we do with our respective clients, and we have different approaches too. That piece about understanding what you are most talented to do or just the best in the world at, I take a slightly different approach, which I'd love to share and get your feedback on. My favorite tool of choice to use here, first, I 100% everything that you've done in the past and being able to shape that is perfect. What I love to look at is a tool called Strengthsfinder. Are you familiar with this one?
Yeah.
Okay. There's so much power in this. And for anybody listening, like the Gallup Strengthsfinder assessment was created by the Gallup, the research organization. The people who do more research and spend more time, effort, and energy trying to answer really hard problems. And what they set out to solve was to answer one question. And that question was, what makes a high-performing team? Simple question. And they did thousands and thousands of hours of research, and they actually came down to a single answer. I mean, how many times does a research project that asks a very powerful question actually come down to one single sentence answer? And they said this: the highest performing teams have individuals in roles that maximize their strengths. That's it. And what they define as strengths is what you are naturally talented to do. We are all wired certain ways. We all have beliefs and cultural backgrounds and upbringings and all these things, but we fundamentally see the world through the lens of our strengths. Every single person on the planet does. If we can understand how someone else sees the world through the lens of their strengths, all of a sudden now we can figure out how to get the absolute highest and best output, not only of ourselves, but also of other people. Because when you do work that is aligned with your strengths, the sky's the limit. There's absolutely nothing that's going to stand in your way. Time flies. And this is probably the best indicator. If anybody's out there thinking like they haven't taken the assessment, that's fine. Look at the areas of your work and the time that you spend today where you just lose track of time. Those will be areas that are aligned with your strengths. So I'll share my example here. My number one strength is something called maximizer. And this is in the Strengthsfinder vocabulary. There are 34 total strengths. This is just one of them. Everybody just has a different list of most dominant to least dominant on that 34 different strengths. Okay. So there's a very large number, whatever that number is, of combinations that someone could have from most dominant strength to least dominant. And all it says is that your most dominant strengths are the things you're naturally talented to do. And so if you do more things that are aligned with those most dominant strengths, you're going to have more success. Mine is called Maximizer. And what it means to me is that I see strengths in other people oftentimes before they see it in themselves. And bringing awareness of strengths to others gives me tremendous satisfaction. And it 100% does. It lights me up. And also, I see things that are average and I make them exceptional. Those are the key elements of what my number one strength, the thing that I am most talented to do. And I have a very clear language to be able to describe that to other people. When I talk about that with clients, when I used to talk about that with my teams, the goal was you need to understand exactly how I operate best and how I can contribute at the absolute highest level. And in turn, I'll be able to do the same thing for you, because we don't want a whole bunch of people working together who have exactly the same strengths profile, because we want a diverse group of strengths. So we want complements. And I've learned this many times, sometimes the hard way, that being a maximizer means that I can't do a deep financial analysis. That's okay. I've learned to accept that at this point. The whole strengths assessment and strengths philosophy says acknowledge where you don't have strengths, but instead focus your time and your effort and your energy and your attention on where you do have strengths. And when you do work that's aligned with your strengths and you look at the work you need to do and the relationships you need to build through the lens of your strengths, everything can change. And that's why can 100% with confidence say, I know exactly what I am most skilled at. I know exactly how to be the best in the world at what I do. And that's what I bring to the table every day in my coaching, my work with the B2B Leaders Academy, and why we have so much fun, because I know you're on the same path here because you're following the same playbook. Curious for you've taken the assessment before. Give me the just high level, what you remember about going through it and what, if anything, was revealed to you.
The revelations were, I have to circle back with you on that one. And yet it was tough. It wasn't technically anything tough about it. And yet answering the questions, there was really times when I
Yeah.
was just trying to gauge, where am I? Because there was things that I felt a bit of a double mind. Or I'm on this side, but sometimes I'm on this side. And it's one of those
Yeah.
things where I don't want to be in the middle of every answer. So there's kind of like this way, and then you could pick where you're at. I just remember that being the case when I got through to thinking, did I really give the fully aligned answer with that, or
Yeah.
did I
Yeah.
soften it because I wanted to be more middle ground or something like that? But it being really thought provoking questions that I really had to sit with internally and see, where do I align? What's true for me? Where do I resonate? And then mark my answer to it. I do remember that.
They're exceptional at being able to ask. I mean, it takes no more than 20 minutes max. And it's a series of questions where you say, more likely, less like me. But the fact that you can
Yeah.
come back from
Yeah.
that instantly with a prioritized list of your most dominant to least dominant strengths is just absolutely mind blowing from a data perspective. And just the amount of research and the ways they put all that together. And I know they catch those things because oftentimes people say, I'm not sure if I answer like this, they ask a different question, it counteracts, and somehow they make that all work. But the keys in this case are when thinking about the experience in the individual, it's about the experience of what they've done, which some of those things are probably pretty well aligned with their strengths, especially those major successes. But there's probably been a lot of what they've done that has perhaps not been aligned with their strengths. And I think that lies tremendous opportunity for leaders in order to dig deeper, understand themselves on a much more deeper level to say, what is it that I'm naturally talented to do? Because if I can operate in this area, then I can take on any challenge through my proven system. through reducing the cost by 20 million bucks a year, whatever the ultimate example was that you were sharing. It's just so powerful when you have a language. And the reason I've taken every different type of assessment there is, because always fascinated by this stuff, the only one I come back to is strengths, because it doesn't put you in a box. It doesn't add a label. It just gives you a language to describe the infinitely difficult question, Jewel, what are you most talented to do? And that's it. That's all it does.
I like that.
We could go on forever on that. But I want to come back to the proven system piece. And there's 3 to 5 steps. So I would put this in my world. What I talk about this is having a framework. And one of the most important things that an executive and a leader at any level, even an individual, can do is improve their communication by recognizing that not everybody else has the same level of context as you do. And so it is in that overcoming that crisis of context where we make that misguided assumption that because I spend all my time thinking about how to save the company $20 million in this situation, everybody else must think about this too, or at least they know what I'm talking about because this is so basic. And the reality is, I'd love to get your take on this. Most times, the more basic, the better. And as you said, those steps, assessment, approval, execution, refinement, you might look at that and be like, oh, that's simple. Yeah, but it wasn't simple to get there. It was through the experiences that the individuals
Right.
had, but they've communicated in a way that anybody can understand those 5 steps. That's the key.
That's right.
In that case, when thinking about the proven system, when working with your clients, is this something that is already they're aware of, or you're asking a question, what have you done? And you have to help shape and mold and,
Absolutely.
okay, me too.
Sitting with the clients during the session and going back through their previous roles or where they're currently at in previous
Yeah.
projects and asking them, what were the steps that you went through to take that from beginning to end? We start to parse those apart, and really have to clarify many times what are the specific steps in there. And it's just not so clear
Yeah.
when we begin, but we really distill it down and we can get it to about 3, 4, or maybe
Yep.
5 different steps that they've done in order to bring it from concept to completion. And that becomes their repeatable, proven system.
Yep.
And they put a name on it. And it's a fun part of the process as well. I love that part of the process. I'm the guy in the friend
Yeah.
group that
Yep.
comes up with a nickname for people immediately. And then I'm going to come up with more and more and more and more. I just don't stop. So it's great to be able to find somewhere it's actually useful in the business world.
I still use 100%. I love it as well. So I'll give you an example. One of my frameworks is the one I wrote my book around, and everything I do from a leadership perspective. So leadership is a gigantic, huge topic that could potentially mean something different to everybody. And whether they're an individual contributor, manager, director, VP, SVP, C level in an early stage, growth stage, scale stage, company, whatever, Fortune 500, everything, it could mean something different to everybody. As a leadership coach or as somebody who's an expert in their respective field, have to be able to communicate all that expertise and start very simply. So in my world, I say there are 4 pillars to leadership. Pillar 1 is leading yourself. This is all about everything that you control. Pillar 2 is about leading others. This is all about everything you do with your team. Pillar 3 is leading with communication. This is all about communicating your value and your team's value beyond that of your team. And pillar 4 is leading with metrics. This is where the measurement of everything that you do for yourself and your team comes together. So in that brief, 20-second overview, I've just now laid the foundation for a conversation around leadership that is going to follow my framework. And I might ask somebody else, well, based on that, which one of those would you like to know more about? And then you say, oh, that pillar 3 is really interesting. That's usually the one that comes up most because it's where the communication comes in. It's where the frameworks come in. It's where the marketing, your leadership comes in. Then we can have a really nice conversation, but I'm never going to assume and go straight to a tool or straight to a detail or straight to a tactic because they just don't know the playing field yet. And it's my job as a leader, and certainly as a coach, but absolutely as a leader, to be able to set the stage to bring people along with me, just like in that assessment, approval, execution, refinement, inflection. Your client set the stage for what he was going to do. And it's the exact same way. So we're solving the same problem, slightly different approach, but it's really fun to be able to share that and with someone who is doing the same type of work. And it's just the same piece keeps getting overlooked,
Yes, sir.
which is if you're not able to effectively communicate your value and the value of your team in a clear and cohesive and concise way to people who have no idea what you and your team do, you're missing a massive opportunity. And both Jewel and I can help.
Absolutely. Nels, I'm curious, how did you come up with your system?
The very first framework I ever built, I learned the lesson the hard way. I was a VP years ago, and I got to the end of that run, and I decided to become a consultant in the customer success space. Upon deciding this, there was an upcoming conference that I wanted to speak at. I reached out to the organizer of the conference, somebody I knew, and I said, "Hey, I'd love to speak." He said, "Cool, let's talk." And he asked me one simple question: "What can you present on?" And for the next 2 to 3 minutes, no joke, I verbally vomited all over this poor conference organizer, telling him all the things I had done. I built
Man,
this process and I started this initiative and I did this and I did onboarding and I did this with a team. I mean, it was all minutia detail, and his look on his face was literally just disbelief. He had no idea what I was talking about because I was
man,
talking as if he knew everything about my past. I paused, I caught myself, and I said, "You know what? Let me go away and think about this, and I'll come back to you in a week or two." He's like, "Okay, fine." I had no idea what to do. So I called up one of my mentors, one of the best marketing guys in the Valley. And I said, "Hey, I have no idea how to do this. I just verbally vomited all over this poor organizer. Help me communicate what I do." And I knew he was a master at this, communication in general. So he said, "All right, come spend a half a day with me. We'll figure this out." I went to his house, spent half a day, and we came away with my very first framework, which was called the 4 Ps. It stood simply for people, purpose, process, and platform. Now, all of a sudden, all that junk that I was throwing all over the organizer was organized into these nice, discrete buckets of which I could present first before going to any level of detail. And he was very pleased when I presented this 4 piece framework a couple of weeks later, and even remarked how the purpose piece was something he hadn't thought of because it was a cornerstone of my work. And I was like, wow, this is really powerful. And I went on to present that 4 piece framework at that conference and had a tremendous reaction and very positive response because I could communicate with people who had no idea what I had done in the past. And they had never heard my name before. That was the most powerful way. Now, that was the start. Once I realized that, every consulting engagement, every proposal I made, everything centered around that framework because it was the only way I could get people to understand all the detail that I do, but in a way they could grab and take hold of. And I've gone on to build many, many different frameworks over the years, both for projects, for training programs, for conference presentations. Anytime I'm going to be talking to anybody, the number one question I ask first is, what level of context does this audience have about the topic I'm going to talk about? And most times it is zero. Then I know I need to go way up high to the 50,000 foot view and start very simply, and then bring them along with me to an appropriate level of detail. But that's how I got to this point with the frameworks.
this is Earth. There are people on Earth. There are oceans and mountains on Earth.
Everybody else told them about the soil concentrate and the roots in
Yes.
the ground inside of the
Yeah, right. The
exactly,
microbes,
micro in the
right?
microorganisms. Exactly. That's exactly it. Like, but if you go top down and bring people from the atmosphere down into the space, they can come with you. If you start in the ground, they can't come up with you. It's not possible to go reverse direction.
Right,
And that's, I think, is such an important
right.
piece from a leadership perspective, is the ability to communicate at that level. As silly as it seems when you hear something like your 5 step process or my 4 pillars, whatever, it's like, yeah, that's basic. Everybody knows that. It's common sense. That's one of my favorite things. It's common sense. Well, the thing about common sense is it's not so common.
Not so common. So I have this newsletter that I send out, and one of the tidbits of advice and success strategies, and one of the newsletters I sent out, I think it was last week, was on communication. A basic piece about saying, and I
Mhm.
was fishing, as opposed to crisp, clean, direct communication, conveying more confidence. Now, I get it. I'm guilty of it as well. And yet that's what the newsletter was about. And one of the pieces in the newsletter was actually about talking a little slower. I'm one of those guys that when I get excited, I speed up
Me too.
in my communication. And yet, looking at Satya Nadella over at
Yeah.
Microsoft and some of these other senior leaders and CEOs, they're very metered. We can even take politicians. You name it, whatever side of the aisle you're on, they train them and then they act accordingly. They slow down their speech to make sure everyone understands. And so these are these simplifying tactics and strategies that help to get one's message across and ultimately be able to convey value, connecting that back to frameworks.
100%. I love it. And I definitely guilty of getting a little excited and the pace of speech
Okay.
increases because I have the passion, right? This is part of the alignment
Yeah.
with the strengths. Like this is talking about these things and thinking about a leader listening to this podcast and being able to take something we've said and put into action. Like that just gives me energy for days. And that just gets me so excited. The other key piece, I think it's critical, which I've been paying more attention to in the last like 6 to 12 months, have worked with a particular coach on this particular area, is in the inflection and the tone and the use of strategic pauses. All of those pieces play into this
Drama.
drama. There is no such thing as an uneventful presentation if you don't want it to be uneventful. You can literally change the game with one small tweak and one small inflection at a certain point at the end of a sentence. And it's fascinating just how much potential is there. But again, we often overlook it. In the B2B Leaders Academy, I had a voice coach. He's a voice coach to Hollywood stars and has been around the industry for a long, long time. Amazing guy. He came and did a presentation all about how to master your voice. And he has this thing called the compelling speaker formula. Really cool. And what he delivered in just a short 30-minute presentation, and we had time for one-on-one and interacting with him. And the comments that I received from all the leaders in this program was my mind was blown. Simply because I never thought about how to use my voice to communicate and how to use my voice as a leader and how important it is. I mean, the thing that we are with from the very time that we are born, most of us never think twice about how to tune it or how to use it in a more powerful way. Now, there's some people who are incredible speakers and orators and naturally, and others have gone through lots of training, but it's always there. And it's just one of those things that is staring us in the face, literally, and our ears every day. And we don't often think about, but holds incredible potential that if you tap into that and you deliver things, then you show up a different way, and then you get a different opportunity and make a different connection and perhaps end up further down the 3 S's as we were talking about earlier. All right, Joel, as we begin to wrap up here, where can people find out more about you and Black Executive Men?
Folks, please head over to blackexecutivemen.com. It's spelled exactly how it sounds, blackexecutivemen.com. You can read about our organization, what kind of coaching services we provide, and if you want to schedule an initial consultation, there's a button, actually a few buttons on the website that just say, let's talk. Click that, complete that, and we'll be talking very soon.
Awesome. Well, Joel, it was an absolute pleasure to talk all things leadership, Black executive men. I just love the work that you're doing and the passion that you have. We're well aligned. It was a lot of fun having you on. So thank you so much for spending your time with me.
Nils, thank you for this, and I look forward to being on again.
Yeah, would love to have you back in the future. Cheers. Thank you for listening to the B2B Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd welcome you to subscribe and give the show a 5-star review. You can see the show notes and all of the resources mentioned in today's episode at b2bleadershippodcast.com. As always, I'm Nils Vinya, and I hope you'll join us again next week. Take care and have a great rest of your day. This podcast is brought to you by the B2B Leaders Academy. The cost of not consistently developing your leadership skills is enormous, and the B2B Leaders Academy features monthly leadership training and live coaching. Being a great leader isn't hard. You just need a guide and the right set of tools. So head on over to b2bleadersacademy.com to join and become the leader you have always wanted to be.